Triple E EDC back again with another knife video. This is the full-size, full-thickness Medford Marauder. Now we're just going to talk about the knife today. I know Medford is a controversial figure, so as far as the knife goes, we're just going to talk about the knife, not the company or the maker or anything else. So let's go ahead and do some size comparisons in a minute, but first I'm going to run through a little bit of what makes, what the Marauder is. So the Marauder is part of a series of knives that Medford does. They have the Dress Marauder, they have the Slim Midi, the Marauder H, which is basically the full size in a smaller thickness, and then you've got the full size, full thickness Marauder. So this one is the largest. This is the full size, full thickness Marauder, and this knife is it's a beast. So let's go ahead and do some size comparisons because just like women in the dating world, you know, this is all about size, right? So let's go ahead and talk about first the Microtech Socom Elite, which this thing dwarfs, no problem. This is the Benchmade turret, another big knife that this thing dwarfs. We've got the Spyderco Paramilitary 2 and the Para 3, and this thing again makes these knives look tiny. We have the Benchmade Super Freak and the Mini Freak. And just look at that Mini Freak next to this thing. So yeah, this thing is a beastly knife. Let's go ahead and talk about the good and the bad. So right off the bat, the good on this is the weight, right? If you want a big, thick, overbuilt knife, this thing is heavy. It is heavy, heavy, heavy in every aspect of the word, heavy and thick. The scales are not milled out. They're full, thick scales. I'm going to put this as a plus because in this type of knife where you're really just wanting something really overbuilt, the heft of it is really what you're looking for, right? So I actually think that's a plus on this knife. A lot of knives I would say I prefer to be more milled out, especially when you're dealing with something really heavy. But it's a plus on this knife. Now, we also have nice styling on this knife. This comes in a bunch of different styles. So this is the plain raw stonewashed titanium essentially, and this is the PVD coating they have on the blade. The blade steel, by the way, is S90V, but we'll go ahead and get into that in a moment. Generally, you can get these in coated, uncoated. You can get these in tanto or the drop point. You can get the handles in all sorts of different anodizing and patterns that they'll sculpt into the handles, and that'll cause it to be varying prices as well. So one thing that's great about Medford as a brand and great about this knife is you can really customize it any way that you want, and you can order it that way from the factory or from the store when you get it. And so I think that's really cool. Another great thing about this is the hardware here is all well, the body hardware I should say is all large deep screws, which means that you can get to them easily. We'll get to the pivot in a little later in the review. And also it's got really solid lockup here with these external stop pins. This thing is a freaking vault. It is a tank, and it may as well be a fixed blade. It's so beastly, so tank-like. The steel on this is S90V. Now you can get different steels. You can get 3V. I would have loved to get a 3V one. I don't think they were making 3V when this one came out or became available on the market essentially. But they are making 3V here and there. They make D2, although I think they're making less of that these days. The D2 they use is CPM D2, not the regular D2. This is S90V, and again, they do S35VN regularly. S35VN is probably what you see most of these days. The S90V, I believe, is mostly for DLT trading. I think they have an exclusive on it, maybe, on the S90V. But I'm sorry, actually, I got this at Knife Joy, so so it must not be an exclusive. But they do have exclusives for S90V for a lot of the knives from DLT trading. In any event, S90V is going to keep an edge for a good long time. It's a little chippy for some people, but in a blade this thick, you're probably not going to have much problem with chipping, so S90V I think is actually fine here. Although I think 3V would probably be some of the best option you could have here for for a steel. In any event, you can get different steels on here and be totally fine. The Tanto on the version of this looks really fierce, and you can also get a vulcanized style blade, which is essentially, they heat treat it so that it has sort of rainbow colors and all sorts of different effects. The only thing about the vulcanized treatment is they can't control the result. So you can order you can either order one pre-built, or you can order one from the factory and not know exactly what that treat is going to look like. It might look like, you know, a deep red, or it might look orange. It might look, you know, even bluish. You won't know until you get it. So in any event, the grind on here is a hollow grind, which is good because on this blade, which by the way, this blade shape is really nice, even if the blade is a little thick. But the blade shape is really nice, and the fact that they take the edge down significantly with a hollow grind, I think is really important here on this one. You have a nice blade choil for a nice choke up, and this actually is really, really comfortable ergonomically. This is probably the most ergonomically friendly design that Medford makes as far as the Marauder series. I've held a bunch of different Medfords, and this Marauder series has the best ergonomics of any that I've held. The ergonomics on this, I'd say, are pretty well, about an 8.5 out of 10, which I think are good for most Medfords. This is really, really thick in the hand. I have size large gloved hands, by the way, and you get a nice choke up position, as I said, on that blade. A fuller here is both attractive and functional. It is attractive, you know, just because it's, I like it quite, well, I should say it's attractive because it adds to the knife. This is a flat, you know, it's sort of milled out and then flat at the bottom here. The older versions had a rounded version. The older versions also had different hardware here. The fuller is functional though, because it's designed essentially to be used as a rollout. Right? So you start at one end and you roll it up and come to the back end. Now, that being said, you can really flick it just the same right here, just from the top, or you can even, you know, do a little Spidey flick from the other side. So you've got all those different options for deployment, which is great. Next thing is the action on here is absolutely amazing. Now, these are washer knives, phosphor bronze washers. They are not bearings, although there is, I think Dirk Warning, who's a YouTuber, may have had one of these sets of bearings. I'm not sure if he sold it. But by the way, if you're looking at Medfords, check out Dirk Warning's channel if you haven't already. You probably found his before you found mine. But he's got a great channel for especially for Medfords, because he's a big Medford collector. But if you check out this action on here, once you get past that second detent, right, you just put it down, it just falls down. And for a washer knife, you know, that's pretty amazing. Now, the weight of the blade causes a lot of that to happen, and I'm going to, I don't know if I can really show it on the camera without cutting my surface here, but yeah, you can really see it's almost like a guillotine, you know, that it comes down like that. And so the action on here is really, really amazing. I absolutely love that. Just watch your fingers, because it will come down quite a bit. The lockup on here now is beautiful. You know, despite the fact that you don't have a steel lock bar insert here, this actually is quite it's quite smooth as far as the contact of the steel against the titanium now. But we'll get to you know, a little bit more about that later on. The clip on here for a milled clip is actually fairly functional, so I'm pretty happy with that. And the overall design and aesthetic, I think, is really, really pleasing to the eye. A couple of things as far as the bad. So first of all, you know, let's go ahead and start with some of the nitpicks. So the stop pins on the PVD coated ones, I really would like to see them PVD coated. There are versions where they do that as all blacked out, but I think they should do it regularly on all PVD coated ones. I don't know why they don't. So that's something right there. The lanyard hole on here is functional, but weirdly shaped, right? So if you're a lanyard guy, and look, I'm not a lanyard guy, but if you're a lanyard guy, that is something to note, as you may have some issues with that. By the way, this I believe this is a glass breaker here. You guys can leave a comment below and let me know if you know for sure. It could also be a melon crusher. I mean, using that euphemistically, but you guys can let me know again if that's the case. Obviously, this is a backspacer though. Let's go ahead and talk about the next thing that I don't like about this knife, which is the pivot. So I like the pivot design, but it's a proprietary tool, and I really don't like that. Now, Medford does allow you to take these apart now, as long as they used to have a policy where if you took them apart, it voided the warranty, right? They no longer do that. You can take them apart now. Just don't change the internals or anodize, or anodizing or doing any of that type of stuff. That'll void the warranty. But just taking it apart no longer voids the warranty. However, you still need a proprietary tool, which isn't something I love. Next is this thing had the absolute worst case of lock stick. Now, I had a Medford Slim MIDI. I had two of them, actually. And one of them had really, really severe lock stick, right? And the lock stick on this one was actually worse than the lock stick on the Slim MIDI, but the Slim MIDI never broke in. And the Slim MIDI also had a really sharp, because this area cut out right here is so thin, it was almost sharp, right? And this doesn't have that issue. It's not sharp, but it gets so stuck in there, you really need like several fingers pulling in there to pull this back in order to get it off. Now that's worked its way out over time, and now it's really smooth. It really has no problem closing whatsoever. But that was a huge issue for like a month when I first got it. And my hands and fingers were so sore from trying to break this thing in. So thankfully it did break in over time, but you know, when you're spending as much money as you're spending on a knife like this, I don't like to see that. Next is the price. So the price on this is pretty ugly. I mean, look, you're getting great materials, you're getting American craftsmanship, you know, but these are expensive, right? And yes, you're getting massively thick titanium here, a massively thick blade. So especially massively thick S90V, which is expensive. What's the big deal, right? So, but it is pretty expensive. This is $915, you know, for this is just the raw titanium tuxedo version, essentially. So you can imagine the sculpted versions run easily into the thousands, $1,200, $1,300 for some of the other sculpted versions, and then you can go up from there. You know, there's a Alverduzco who's Azkicker, A-Z-K-I-C-K-E-R. So he sells a lot of Medfords with, like, you know, flag patterns and diamonds, you know, diamond encrusted and everything like that. Those things can run into the thousands. Medford guy Jake, he's got, you know, crazy versions that run into the 5-10 thousands of these knives, and so yeah, they're expensive, right? So that's an issue as well. Last thing is the thickness here. So this thing, look, when you're buying a full thickness Marauder, you're buying a full thickness Marauder. But let's go ahead and do the size comparisons I didn't do earlier, which is, here's the Microtech Socom Elite, and here's the spine, you know, of these different knives. Here's the Griptilian. Here is the turret, right? Here is the Shaman, right? The Shaman's not a thin knife. The Shaman's a thick knife, right? But none of these even compare anywhere close to the Marauder here. So this is a very, very thick knife. Now, you know what you're getting into because you're buying a full thickness Marauder. So is that really that bad? No, it's not. It's not bad. That's what you signed up for. But, you know, at the end of the day, a knife is a tool. And I'm going to show you some cutting here with this. Let's see. I'm going to cut this down so you guys can see here. So if you cut into stuff with the edge, right, you can see I'm having trouble cutting into it. This is a sharp knife, okay? It's been sharpened, or not sharpened. I'm sorry. It's still got the factory edge, and it hasn't been dulled, I should say. It's been stropped. So, you know, you're getting cuts, but you're not cutting into these easily. And then when you go down through the material, it's getting wedged over here pretty badly, right? You can see how much strength it's taking you to get through it. It's still ripping it, right? So this is a knife at the end of the day. It shouldn't be making that much of a mess, and it shouldn't be, you know, that hard to get through. Now, conversely, here's the Benchmade, you know, turret, which is a thick military knife, right? Here's the Spyderco Shaman, right? Thick knife. Don't have these same issues. So you can see that, you know, at the end of the day, the primary function of a knife is to cut things. And this thing doesn't really cut things that well. So look, it is what it is. This is pocket jewelry. But when it comes to knives, this is essentially like the equivalent of a lifted truck. Sorry guys if I offend you with this, by the way, but this is the equivalent of a lifted truck with the huge tires, right? I mean, it looks cool. It looks cool, right? But it really, you know, it bogs down the engine. When you put on those tires and you put on those different things, it overpowers the engine, and now your truck is slower, right? It's slower. It doesn't have the same towing capacity because you added all that weight to it. Same thing here, same concept, right? And at the end of the day, you know, with the lifted trucks and you know, this type of knife anyway, women are going to think one of two things: damn, that thing's cool, or damn, he's overcompensating. So it is what it is. And look, ladies, if you want to carry this knife and you have a pocket that fits it, you know, more power to you. But I'm telling you, at the end of the day, I like this knife. I like the fact that I've owned it. I think everyone should handle one of these at some point. But, you know, if you're asking me if I recommend it as an EDC tool, no, I don't. I don't recommend it as an EDC tool. This is my conclusion here. It's not an EDC-friendly tool, but it's really cool. It makes people smile. It makes people laugh. It makes you feel tough and cool when you're carrying it, you know, and it's great in that regard. But as an EDC tool, not that great, and I can't recommend it, especially at the price. But I've enjoyed this a lot, having it. And there's a reason it stuck around for such a long time in my collection. It's not like I bought it, was dissatisfied with it, and I'm selling it. This stuck around in my collection for probably a good year, at least. And, you know, that's saying something because I cycle through knives pretty quickly. So, again, not necessarily on the recommend list, but go handle one. They're really cool, you know, and if you have the money to spend, and it's not your primary EDC option, then yeah, go get one. Otherwise, you know, it's a pass. Thank you.